The final question here, and this feels like a good place to wrap because we began the podcast mentioning this. Thomas Rodriguez asks, what's Jimmy Butler's TPA versus actual NBA player rank? So I have his TPA pulled up for this season. He is third in the league behind Giannis at number 2. And as if there was ever any doubt, Nikola Jokic at number 1. So he is third in TPA. Where would you rank him? Whether you want, let's do this 2 ways. Where would you rank him right now? Based off only what we've seen, no other games coming.
Sure.
As the player in the league, and then moving forward, what would you project him as for the rest of the year?
I think at this stage of the season, it's a toss-up between him and Jokic for best player and MVP honors. If we were just basing it solely like a blind resume test where player reputations did not matter whatsoever, it's those two as the leaders of the NBA this season. I think you can have Kevin Durant, Giannis, maybe Paul George and Steph as like a 1B tier, but Butler is in that conversation for the absolute best player in the world based solely on what we've seen this season. He's a very high energy, high effort player. And given how much he's expended at the start of this year, I don't know how sustainable this peak version of him is. So I feel pretty comfortable saying that he's probably going to, heavy air quotes here, regress into being 8 to 10, which is about where you would have had him if you were optimistic heading into the season.
And look, I think that's fair. He has just been, there's nothing about his offensive game that's really changed, which is why I would be encouraged. And look, I want to get this on my chest. The reaction to Butler's offseason extension was overwhelmingly, uncomfortably pro-billionaire proprietor. Maybe that contract, which runs through his age 36 season, doesn't age well. Who cares? Keeping superstars is critical to championship runs. And the Heat, forget about their championship chances. I would argue that they might be the most win-now team in the NBA. Even more so, maybe not more so than the Lakers, because Bam Adebayo is younger than Davis, but just looking at what they did with Lowry, giving Butler the extension. Look, they're one of the 3 to 5 most win-now teams in the league. What's equally cringy, just because someone signs a deal that you don't like in some, it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to start sucking. Like, this is, worst case scenario is maybe the final 3 years of the 5 total years left on his deal look bad. We still have like at least 2 years, I would argue, of peak Jimmy Butler basketball. And he's coming off what was arguably a career best campaign. People only seem to remember there was that flame out in the playoffs. He was probably exhausted. The Heat were coming off the shortest offseason in sports history. If you want to weight it to some extent, sure, but that's not the Jimmy Butler that you're just going to remember. So I almost wouldn't even play the it's still early caveat here. He's shooting a worse percentage from mid-range. He's at 37.5% from 3, but he's actually taking fewer threes. So that's, even if that comes down, it's not this huge part of his game. And the new focus on like these organic offensive movements, they haven't impacted him. He's getting to the line basically just as often. And I think when you've looked at him, he's always felt more like a natural brute force than sort of this like inorganic off Broadway play actor. And I'm just throwing shade at James Harden there. So do I think he's going to 25 plus points on 62 plus true shooting percentage all year? My guess would take the under on both, but this could wind up, if the Heat care enough about the regular season, I think that might be the biggest caveat of all here. As of right now, he's clearly top 2, top 3 on the MVP ballot. I think Jokic is number 1. I don't know. Butler might be there. Anyway, regardless.
Like I said, it's a toss up.
I do think that his place in the MVP ballot, let's say top 3, is eminently sustainable, because I'm looking at him.
But there's a difference. Sorry to interrupt there, but like I'm answering from the standpoint of like player rankings, not MVP ballot. Because I do think, given his importance to the Heat, that his spot on an MVP ballot supersedes his placement in player rankings.
So yes, that's a great point. I guess where I would diverge is I would think he was probably 8 to 10 last year. And because he's been better so far, I mean, you started naming the people that I would definitely take over him. And let's play the brutally honest card. There's Giannis. There's Jokic. I'd go Steph. I'd go Durant. That is it. That I'm guaranteeing for the rest of the season.
That you're absolutely guaranteeing.
That, like LeBron, we already mentioned the concerns there. And you know that I've been more bullish on LeBron's aging curve than you, for sure. And there are other players that can work. James Harden.
What about Luka?
No. No. Look,
Embiid?
Embiid, maybe. Is he going to play enough?
Healthy Kawhi.
He's not playing this season. If he does, it's going to be like 15 games probably. Who
Fair
would you
enough.
guarantee beyond the 4 that I mentioned? I guess would be my question. Guarantee.
I'm comfortable putting Luka in there because no matter how much Jason Kidd tries to fuck him up, he's still just that good.
Yeah,
But beyond that, like that's where I think, and again, like, you know, as I've spent more and more time doing this, I've gained more affinity for ranking in tiers rather than just specific ranks.
I enjoy the rankings discussion in general, but I do agree with you, and I know Seth Partnow of The Athletic and the Mid-Range Theory book is pretty bullish on the tiers, and I do agree there. That's definitely fair.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, looking at the Crystal Basketball Project, Butler checked in at 16th. That's too low. I think that he's
16th?
He was 16th.
Who's responsible? Name names right now.
Honestly, no one was.
What did I give him?
You and Brian Toporek were the only people to give him a 10. Everyone else gave him a 9.
Cowards. You're all cowards. And I love every single person who participated, I think. But you're all cowards.
But I think, like, you know, you said Giannis, Jokic, KD, and Steph. I'm going to throw Luka in that top tier. Maybe we can have 2 like sub tiers within that top tier. But then I think, like, you're looking at Embiid, Harden, Lillard, Anthony Davis, Paul George.
You're not going to mention LeBron at all.
LeBron. and like Jimmy Butler. I think that's a reasonable next tier. Let's throw Gobert in there, who's just been phenomenal to start the season. You want to talk about a guy who deserves some love on MVP ballots right now. You know, we haven't mentioned him to this point. His offense has been fantastic.
It's a wild that, let's say, the betting consensus appears to be catching up, because he's better than 20-1 to win MVP right now. And just for context, Jimmy Butler's 49-1 at this moment. I think Gobert was 19-1 or something. That's, people will quibble. They think he should be 3rd or 4th, whatever, and he doesn't have 3rd or 4th best odds. But just knowing what people value in the MVP discussion, the fact that Gobert is sniffing 20-1 is incredible.
But point being, I think that Butler is firmly in the midst of that like 6 to 12 tier. Where you have him in that is immaterial to me. I don't care if you have him 12th, if you have him 6th. I think he firmly belongs in that same tier as LeBron, Embiid, Harden, Dame, Anthony Davis, like those names. Granted, that relies on James Harden and Damian Lillard remembering that they're James Harden and Damian Lillard, but that's for another discussion.